Today is the first workshop for the series called Queer Career Cultivation, where we focus on helping our community get access to jobs and tips, including like job searching, resume writing, all that fun stuff. Today we have an amazing facilitator who is going to be guiding us through the job search process and also provide some tips on resumes, what to look for, what not to look for, and all that fun stuff. So I'm going to pass the Zoom mic over to Charles Warren, and they will give a lovely introduction to get started with the slides.
Okay, thank you so much, Jordan. I really appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So as Jordan had said, this is Queer Career Cultivation, and that is a bit of a tongue twister, so go ahead and say that 10 times fast. So it's great to be here. I'm really excited to work with the Bradbury-Sullivan team to provide this, and thank you for inviting me to speak with you today. So whether you're watching this live or watching it later at home, welcome. So who am I? Who is this person that's talking to you right now? So my name is Charles Warren. My pronouns are he, they. My greatest joy, honestly, is being a helper and being able to do things like this. Almost second to coffee. I do drink a ton of coffee. I'm on cup 10 right now. So feel free, if I'm going at the speed of light, for anyone to slow me down and ask questions. Talking a little bit about, my background and why I'm here speaking to you today. So I am currently working at Open Space Counseling, Consulting, and Wellness. What I do there is a lot of community outreach, and that's how I connected originally here with Bradbury-Sullivan. My professional background is a little bit of everything. So I have a Master of Science in Human Resources Management. I'm also a certified professional through the Society for Human Resources Management, which is lovingly known as SHRM. I have spent the last 10 years working through human resources and different management roles in a bunch of industries. So I actually started in the hospitality and service industry. I was working as a cook, and I made my way through, the back of the house to the front of the house, and essentially worked my way up into hospitality management, which is when I decided I wanted to, really change my careers into being more of a helper. And I shifted gears into human resources, and I ended up working for staffing agencies, international organizations, as well as local government here in Pittsburgh. So fast forward to where we are now. So I currently am pursuing a second master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. And my goal is to be a therapist, specifically serving the LGBTQ plus community. So those are kind of my background, my joys, and where I kind of am focusing my time. As we are going through here, feel free, like I said, I'm on cup 10 of coffee, so you can slow me down and ask questions at any time. There are no silly questions. If you are watching this at home and you're not here live, you can always reach out to me directly through email and follow up with questions if you have them. So what are we talking about today? So what is our raison d'etre for being here? So as Jordan had mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about job searching as a queer person, as well as resume writing, and some tips and tricks, and how you can work on, if you are currently changing careers, and how to sell your transferable skills. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about how to kind of tell if an employer is queer affirming, which, let's be honest, there is not one specific way. There's no guarantee to know that this person that you're going into is going to be queer affirming and competent, but the hope is that if we do a little bit of homework in advance, we kind of might have a feeling of what we're walking into. We're also going to talk about career changes. And as I had mentioned, I have changed my area of focus and my industry that I've worked in a couple of times now. So spoiler alert, it's okay. If you need to, find a place that, if your current role is not bringing you joy, if it's not bringing you financial stability or, your peace of mind, it's okay to change jobs. So we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. We're going to talk about interviewing, resume creation, and emphasizing your soft skills. So the first thing that I really want to talk about here is, this how to kind of check if an employer is queer, competent, and affirming. So like I said, there's not an exact science to this, but as a visibly queer person who has had to navigate this personally and professionally, I'm going to give you some of the, the resources that I personally and professionally have used. Because I have been, in a challenging situation where I've struggled to get past that first interview, even when I know that I was qualified for that role. So sometimes you are going to have to just trust your gut and really kind of be able to read the room to see if this is going to be a safe place for you to work. But some of the tools that I really kind of wanted to highlight here in case you're not familiar with them. So the first one is the National LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce. So what I actually really love about this organization is that they do offer certification for businesses, and that certification is called the LGBTBE, which stands for business enterprise. So essentially what they are doing is they are highlighting and certifying businesses that make it a strategic priority to diversify their suppliers and who they work with. And, they're really kind of cultivating this strategic partnership with the LGBTQ community. A lot of these business owners are part of the community themselves, or, they're allied in some way. So I thought that was important to kind of highlight because they have a lot of specific affiliates, and we actually have one here in Pittsburgh. So in case you're not familiar with that, that is the Three Rivers Business Alliance, and that's the Pittsburgh and Greater Allegheny LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce affiliate. And honestly, I've been to a couple of the networking events through the Three Rivers Business Association, and they are great. They are very welcoming, they are fun, they're funny. So I swear this is not an ad for the NGLCC or the Three Rivers Business Alliance or anything like that. I don't have a direct relationship with either of them, but I think that they do a lot of really great work for businesses in our community. And what I would encourage you to do as I kind of talk about these is, think about like who's sponsoring and who's working with these businesses and who's taking the time to make this a priority. These are the types of companies that you can kind of indirectly screen, because if they're working with these companies, then you know that they have an invested interest in the community. So, the Pittsburgh specific NGLCC affiliate, they actually have a job directory on their website that shows, when they might have partners who are hiring for positions. And they also have a directory that shows who is a member. So who is working with the Three Rivers Business Alliance or the NGLCC. So those are really important for you to kind of know, especially if you're local to the area and you're looking for a queer, competent, and affirming business. Now, The next one that I'm going to highlight here, this is kind of like an HR nerd's dream come true, which is me. And this is the HRC, so the Human Right Campaign Foundation, their Corporate Equality Index. So they come out with this, every so often that really kind of rates employers that are committed to implementing the LGBTQ plus inclusive policies, benefits, procedures, things like that. So it's really a national benchmarking tool for LGBTQ equality and best places to work. So I'm sure we're all familiar with like the Forbes, 10 or the Forbes 5 of like best places to work. Well, HRC kind of has the equivalent version that's for the LGBTQ community. So these reports are like super, super in depth. They go over a lot of information. They kind of highlight like who's at from a scale of 0 to 100% based on like specific criteria, like who's at that 100% mark and who's pretty low. So it kind of gives you an idea too about like, not necessarily just the person that you are maybe face-to-face interviewing with, but like a company as a whole, like how have they structured their strategic priorities and benefits and things like that. So, they even look at what type of companies are offering like trans-inclusive healthcare and domestic partner benefits, as well as what companies have non-discrimination policies related to sexual orientation and gender identity, because that's still not a given that those are protected things in this day and age. So it's a really important tool. It's not necessarily maybe light bedtime reading, but it is something that is kind of, a great kind of point you in the direction of like what companies are doing the work and showing up for the community. So some other things here that you can use, and I really highly recommend, this is more of like your local networking and referrals. So when we're talking about this, look at the community and the nonprofit resources who are here in Pittsburgh or the surrounding areas. So I highlighted just a few that like I've personally like either heard great things about or I've seen the work that they do. I know some of the people that work in these organizations. So like Trans Uniting, Sisters, Brothers PGH, Hugh Lane Wellness Foundation, Proud Haven, PGH Equality Center. Of course, we can't forget Bradbury-Sullivan. So, I mean, there is a ton of resources out there that, you can really look at not maybe just what that specific outreach or community center is offering, but who is partnering with them? Like what companies are sponsoring their events or sponsoring advertising or sharing their information and offering resources? Like those are the kind of companies that you want to look at because they are most likely going to be queer, competent, and affirming. The other things that I just wanted to quickly highlight, there are some professional networking resources. So if you're a LinkedIn kind of person, these are kind of similar to that. And that is Out Professionals, which, they have free and paid membership. So they do a lot of talking about like career planning and community check-ins and culture and what that looks like for LGBTQ community in a professional workspace, and the Pride Network. So Pride Network is actually kind of interesting because they offer some community grants in, they offer some community grants in like connection and training and mentorship. And I just think that that's really cool because there's not as many organizations out there that do that kind of really investing back into the community to help future leaders. So, and I could not talk about social media because I feel like social media is so big in our day and age. And my 14-year-old likes to tell me that Facebook is only for old people. So if that is true, I'm sorry, but I'm going to highlight, the Facebook group, which is the LGBTQ community of Pittsburgh. So, you know, I personally use this so often in my professional life as well as my personal life because it does have over 7,000 members in it. And there are a lot of local business owners in that group because they're part of the community. There's people that work at organizations that can kind of tell you like if they, you know, work in an affirming place. So I see all the time people talking about the, you know, hey, I'm looking for a job. I need a place that's not going to question or, you know, have concerns about like who I am so that I can show up authentically as a person. So I really highly recommend checking it out. Again, it's one of those things that, like we said, we can never 100% guarantee that someone's going to be queer competent and affirming, but these are the things that I think you know, can kind of help you get to that point where you can feel authentically you to show up as you can. Another way that I really kind of look at is someone competent is what happens after Pride Month. After Pride Month, is there still visibility from the company that's supporting and talking about the LGBTQ community? You know, that will tell you a lot if someone is truly queer, competent, and affirming, or if they are having corporate pride, which is once a year they talk about the LGBTQ community. So some of the ways that you can really do that is to talk about to look at their website, their mission statements, and their branding to see what does it say. You know, do they talk about building that sense of community? Does it just go beyond compliance? Do they disclose any of their hiring practices and some of their metrics, things that hold them accountable, which is a lot of what that HRC equality index does that I was mentioning about earlier. Glassdoor is a really great resource. Not all companies have a Glassdoor, but I will say that you can tend to get a good bird's eye view of you know, how a company is doing and what the general culture is at that company if you look at Glassdoor. And then something else that I like to say, like I saw this all too often, especially working in local government, is look at the company's leadership team, look at their board of directors. Is there diversity and representation across the board, you know, or is it a like me mentality? Like, does everyone look the same and kind of have the same background? That'll tell you a lot about, you know, who the company is and what they value without so much as saying it. So I'm doing a lot of talking, so feel free to stop me if anyone has any questions here. So when we are talking about interviewing, you know, I think most of us know that, you know, when we go into an organization to see if, you know, if they're going to hire us, we also need to be checking to see, is this the right fit for me? Like, does this organization have the right type of culture, and are they going to be able to support me authentically as a human being? And some of that just comes from observing your own surroundings and really asking those questions. You know, and I really recommend looking at that HRC equality index that I had mentioned earlier, because it can give you some ideas of what organizations are providing and what they are doing so that you know kind of, hey, if this is the baseline of what like the top companies are doing that are LGBTQ inclusive, do you offer this here? So it kind of gives you a baseline there. So, you know, when you're interviewing, when you're walking around, you can look to see if there's gender neutral restrooms. You can see, like, does the workforce look diverse, or does it have that like me mentality? Ask your questions about how do they promote diversity and inclusion. You know, instead of just saying diversity and inclusion is an important value to us, how do they promote it? What do they do about it? Ask them for specifics. Ask them about the benefits that they offer. You don't have to disclose that you're looking for trans-inclusive healthcare or that you're looking for benefits for your domestic partner, but ask them what they provide and see if that's on their list. You can ask about their values. Again, what do they value as an organization? What do they value as a hiring manager? And how are they going to promote that and have that be part of the culture? The other thing that I don't want to go too much in depth with here, because this is not, I could have a whole interviewing legality 101. That's a whole separate training, but know your rights when you are being interviewed. You should not have to answer any questions about your sexuality, your gender identity, or your family in interviews. These are questions that, sometimes can be used against you if someone is biased or has discriminatory practices. So don't feel pressured to answer these. You can always turn that around. And if someone asks you one of those questions, you can just say, oh, how does that relate to this job? Or how is that going to help me be successful in this job if you know that? Because they really should not be asking those types of questions. And I do have a link here to the SHRM guidelines on interview and employment application questions. So there are a lot of resources out there to learn like what are illegal interviewing questions and what are legal interviewing questions. So we're going to start taking a dive now into understanding maybe some tips and tricks around resume creation. So one of the things that a lot of people, whenever I start talking to them about this, is they don't realize that there's a lot of computer generated screening tools that sometimes get in the way of you ever being able to physically talk to a human being at a company. So there are what we call in the human resources world, the HRIS and the ATS. So that's the human resource information systems and the applicant tracking systems. These things are really great for large companies because it helps screen quickly. If a company is getting thousands of job applicants for just one position, it helps cut those down to get the highest qualified person at the top of the recruiter or the HR person's list so that they can quickly fill that position. What that means is that if your resume is not formatted to be specific to that job, even though you could have the most qualifications, if you don't have all of the ins and outs highlighted that applicant tracking system is going to pick up on, your resume may never make it to the eyes of another human being. So when I say here, how many resumes do you need? It really depends on how many jobs you're applying to. I personally, anytime that I have ever looked for a new job, I have created a resume specific to that job because I'm applying to jobs that I know I'm qualified for, but I look at the specific wording and the specific requirements and the qualities that the company might be using in their job description or in their job posting. So if they have like a specific type of software that they need experience for, I may not have that highlighted on my resume, even though I know how to use it. So if it's in their job description or their job posting, I'm going to put it on there. So we'll talk about that in a little bit more here, but it's really important for you to understand that in order to be seen, especially in a world where, more often than not, we get kind of ghosted by organizations who are hiring. We never hear yes, no, maybe so. A lot of that is because it goes into this, I hate to call it the void, but it really does. It goes into this automatic system that sometimes it just doesn't make it to that person. So it's really important to format your resume in a way that will put you in front of a human being to get the best possible chance of getting that call back. So when we're looking at that here, I just picked a random job, a job description from online. It's a little blurry, so sorry. But, I picked like a relatively simple job, like a simple job description so that we could look at some of the keywords. So I went through and I highlighted, what I would consider the keywords, because there's a lot of stuff on here, but not everything are keywords. And the keywords, when you look at this, is delivering a finished product and troubleshooting, having experience with telephone screening and directing calls, as well as administrative responsibilities. Everything else kind of falls under those key tasks. Everything else is filling a supply request. Well, that's delivering a finished product. Stocking, organizing, cleaning a supplier's in pantry. Well, that's also delivering a finished product and administrative responsibilities. So preparing offices and workstations for new hires, like that is delivering a finished product. And so, these are the kind of things that like you really need to pay attention to when you're reading the job description, because they will have, there could be 4, there could be 10 keywords, but the thing is that you're going to want to highlight those in your own resume somewhere. So you can talk about, if you have done troubleshooting, maybe with problems or copiers, or maybe you've troubleshot something else in like your personal life or professional life. You want to talk about that because that's going to translate to, specific skills that this job or this employer is seeking. When we're looking at the customer service side, like responding to customers and client issues and effective working relationships. So this is all talking about customer service and understanding, how to work well and have those intrapersonal relationships. So being able to respond appropriately in the workplace. So it's really important to kind of look at these, look at the description, use the keywords, look at the skills and abilities that you have and put them on your resume and look at them specific to each job. These are typically found in the qualification sections, or sometimes they have a skills section. This one you can see it has required skills, and then it has customer service, and then it would have knowledge. And I think even underneath of that, it had like technical skills, like needing to use like Office Word and things like that. So those are the key things that you're going to want to look at whenever you are tailoring your resume for when you get ready to apply for a position. So some of the things that should not be on your resume and kind of why they should not be on your resume. So a lot of us, I'm sure, have included our full address on your resume. It's really not required. There is no need for an employer or anyone else who might get your resume to have your full address. And that's really just for safety reasons. When you need to put your full address into something, you will be prompted to do so whenever you're hired. If someone is curious if you are close enough to that organization to do the job, your city and state is going to be sufficient for that. You could even put a zip code if you wanted, but you really do not need to have your full address on there, and I would highly recommend that you take that off just for safety reasons. One of the other things that you really should not have on your resume is the dates that you graduated from school. And the reason why I say that is because it's not important as an employer to know when you graduated. It's important for me as the employer to know if you have the degree and if you graduated, or if you're currently in school. The only time that we would need to know like a date of graduation or something would be if you're under 18, and that's a specific question that would be on there, like, are you 18 or older? You would hit yes. Because if you are putting that you graduated in 2022 from getting your master's degree, that master's degree looks amazing, but people are gonna be like, oh, well, you're so young, you just got out of college. Meanwhile, you could be 20 years into your career and just going back to school. So these are things that, while they are illegal, age discrimination is real. And these are some of the ways that people get caught up with it. Same thing, like, there are hiring biases about hiring someone who might be quote unquote too old. And that tends to happen whenever you have maybe the date that you graduated from high school or the date that you graduated from college or something like that. So they're not necessary for employment purposes, and I highly, highly recommend that you take them off. The other thing is, if you are out of high school and you have more than one job, I would not recommend including hobbies or interest. The only thing you really could, I would suggest including on there would be maybe extracurriculars if you were first time out of job or you just graduated college and you haven't had a job yet. That would be really the only time to kind of have something that's not related to professional work experience on there. Definitely do not include headshots or photos. Again, hiring bias is a real thing. I wish it wasn't, but people do discriminate, based on how people look. And, you do not want to put yourself up for failure. And the other thing that I will say, I've had this conversation with my 14-year-old before, have a professional email address. Do not have Gamerboy 1990 as your email that you are putting on your resume. While that might be important to you and that might be a core part of your identity, it's really important to know that if someone sees an unprofessional email, there's a good chance that they are not going to call you back. Okay, so now I want to talk quickly here about career changing, because I've heard from some people that, they are having trouble changing from, say, like a more labor inducive position to maybe working in an office setting. And sometimes that can happen, if a recruiter is quickly looking at your resume, which I will be honest with you, through my years of experience working in HR and being part of the HR industry, most recruiters will scan your resume for anywhere between 30 to 50 seconds to see if you are in the ballpark of being qualified for the position. So that is why it's so, so important to highlight the keywords that specific job is looking for, as well as the transferable skills that you have. Because if your position has always been for the last 10 years warehouse laborer, but you're applying for a job that is for maybe like a front office assistant or customer service, they're going to say, oh, well, you don't have the experience that's necessary next, even though maybe part of your job in the warehouse was dealing with customers and answering inquiries and helping to problem solve. So it's really, really important to think about those transferable skills. So what are transferable skills? These are things that I like to consider almost like they kind of seep into your skin. Like, it's not necessarily something that you learn how to do like from A to Z. These are things that you learn either through your education or through internships, general work and life experience. And it's really important because these are things that more often than not, an employer can't teach you. These are things that you're either going to have or you don't have or you're working on. So you really want to focus on the job that you want, not necessarily the job that you've had. So again, if you are looking to make that career jump from more labor inducive to office setting, you don't want to highlight that you were able to pack 100 boxes in 10 minutes. You want to highlight some of like your communication and your team working and problem solving skills. So that's another important thing to think about if you're trying to change careers. So, talking about your communication skills, your collaboration, idea sharing, like working with team members and seeking feedback, talking about working in an engaging and productive environment. I mean, who doesn't like working with coworkers that's going to focus on, having fun while also being engaged, while also helping to make sure that at the end of the day, we do everything that we need to get the job done. Like, that's what employers are really looking for, because they're not able to teach that. So, thinking about like any of these skills that you currently have or that you have implemented in your other jobs, how do you highlight them on the resume? Really talking about not just saying communication and teamwork, but like those bullets underneath of it, like, helping bring in new ideas and taking feedback and boosting engagement and productivity. Like, these are going to help you sell your transferable skills, so that employers will see that you're more than just a a job title on a resume. So especially important for someone, like I said, that's transferring industries, transferring jobs, changing careers for the first time, there are different types of resumes. And the most common one is the chronological, which is where it talks about I had this job and they go in order. And this is my most recent all the way down to my first job I ever had. Those are great if you are building your career wealth, we'll call it, and you are trying to get promoted or you're moving to a similar position that it's like very obvious that you are in that industry. The reason why you wouldn't always want to use a chronological resume is when you are changing, your industries, because your experience doesn't always automatically transfer when a resume or when a recruiter or HR person is kind of looking at your resume. So I included this kind of snapshot of like what a functional resume might look like. And it's really talking about, your introduction of like, where are your key skills at? Who are you as a person and who are you as a professional? And I'm sorry, does someone have a question? No, okay. And what are your skills that you are trying to highlight? So you'll see like kind of on the left-hand side, like there's an experience section there where they're talking about like, I was a bar back at Applebee's, I was a server at Whispering Vine, and I was a waiter at Riverside Restaurant. But you wouldn't necessarily think that they had salesmanship experience or technical experience with like computers and, point of sale machines and like their customer satisfaction and like surveys. And this person is like able to speak Spanish and Mandarin. Like, those are things that you really want to highlight if it's kind of almost not like a given whenever you are reading that job title. And that is very common with people who are changing careers. So it's just super important that, you, again, format your resume to be what's most appropriate for you for the position that you're applying for, but also think about if you're changing careers, you might not want to use a chronological resume. Functional is likely going to be your best option if you don't have a lot of experience or any direct experience from the job that you're trying to apply to. So, you can really even use this area to highlight your accomplishments. Like, if you were a server, but like you were the employee of the month for 3 years in a row, or if you were the person that consistently got that 90% or higher customer satisfaction rating, or if you were the person that always was fixing and problem solving, like when the point of sales machine went down, those are important things to highlight that might not necessarily ring true. And those are things that another employer would be looking for, especially if you're looking for like someone to work in an office. They want someone who is, very customer focused and able to kind of go, I hate saying above and beyond, but like able to kind of like see what needs done and kind of focusing on that. So does anyone have any questions about like the difference between a chronological or a functional resume? I just want to make sure that that's pretty clear. I know I've been bouncing off the walls with my 10 cups of coffee, so just offering a 10-second break if anyone needs it.
Okay, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So would the chronological resume include like all this information too? It's just formatted differently?
So typically for a chronological resume, you would not be doing this. So your chronological resume would really kind of start with, your contact information, and then really kind of goes directly into like your experience and your education. Some of the other stuff like the skills section, your accomplishments, they might be smaller bullet points under a specific job, but it's not really going to be as highlighted or as talked about. You won't really necessarily have the opportunity to show like salesmanship or technical experience or interpersonal experience under that bullet point the same way that you would if it's this whole section on the functional. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I said a yes and, so sorry. Any other clarifying questions that someone might have? Okay. So one of the last things that I really want to talk about here, these are the soft skills. So these are the things that employers are going to be looking for the most from you as an employee. Because like I said before, soft skills, AKA people skills, AKA interpersonal skills, these are things that people are not going to be able to teach you. Like you have either learned these through your life experience, your job experience, like who you are as a person. These are things that make you stand out. So, I put on here, like you can be the best computer analyst in the world, but if you can't communicate, take accountability, or work as a team, no one's going to want to hire you. And those things come out in the interview. So, I have a personal story that I will share. I will remove names and company information, but we had an employee who was in the sales department, and they were one of the top performing employees, but they did not necessarily follow our company's ethics on how we made sales, and they didn't follow how we communicated to individuals within the organization, or how we wanted our customers to have that experience of who we were as an employer. So this person was like the literal top revenue generating employee in the company, and we eventually let them go because that person did not fit the culture of having collaboration and teamwork and flexibility and ethics. So these are the things that you really can't teach someone. Most people are born with soft skills, and you can develop them as you grow. But it's not necessarily going to be something that you go into your job and they're like, okay, now we're going to have time management 101. Like sometimes companies will do that if there's like an identified problem, but they're going to expect you to kind of come in and have these skills available to you. So these are the skills, again, that you're going to want to emphasize and talk about, especially if you're changing careers, because some of the hard skills, those are like the teachable abilities and the things that you can quantify. Like if someone has a master's degree, or if someone can type 50 words a minute, or if someone knows how to use Microsoft Office or Excel. So having those types of proficiency and, all of those things are great. But again, if you don't have the people skills and the interpersonal skills, then it's going to be very, very difficult for someone to want to, one, hire you, or two, retain you as an employee. So that is the majority of what we are talking about here today. So I wanted to open it up if anyone did have any questions or if someone needed some clarity from anything that I covered. I'm happy to go back and relook at those. But, I think as Jordan had mentioned, this is part one, which is really kind of talking about, again, that uh, job searching, how to, look for queer competence and queer affirming organizations, and some tips and tricks on when you're formatting your resume to give you the best possible chance to get in front of a person whenever you're looking for a job.